Bingo.
Okay. Yeah. So you know the whole. Do you know that the overview of the movie?
No.
Okay. The overview of the movie is it's Rich Romano, Ray Romano's brother. He's a homicide detective in New York.
Okay.
He is told to take a guy out on a drug bust with him, and it's a guy that might be ready but not be ready. He doesn't think he's ready. His uppers tell him, "No, you're taking him." Takes the guy. The guy kills the drug dealer. Drug dealer's unarmed. Trouble. PR. Someone's got to take the fall. Romano takes the fall. While he's getting fired, another guy from the office comes in and says, "Hey, you got to get to the hospital. Your wife, who is 8 months or so pregnant, she's in the hospital." Mm-hmm. What is it? He goes there. She loses the baby. So those two. He's a I would say practicing Catholic at the time. Walks away from God. Ray Romano gets him a job at his son's Christian high school as a baseball coach, because Rich Romano is a baseball player, and as a criminal justice teacher. And during that time, his students see that doesn't really have any belief in Jesus or in God. Kind of, it's very atheistic in his speech and his tone. And they said, and as they found he's a detective and he's telling them about criminal justice, they say, "Well, how do we know Jesus was true? How can you tell that with your, all your criminal background?" And they say, "Why don't we do this? Why don't we put Jesus to the test? Was he real? Did he do miracles? Right. That kind of stuff." So that's what the movie's about, and he comes back to his faith by going through
the procedure as a detective, going
right.
through the logical steps. He actually says to himself,
Yeah, so basically today I don't have so much of a plan as this. I'd like to find out from you a couple things. I need to learn I'm writing the first chapter of the book. I need to learn the detective's mindset. What is the detective's mindset? How would you investigate anything? Forget about that it's faith involved. And
right.
Just say, if you're going to investigate anything historically like this is a homicide case
right.
from 2,000 years ago.
Right.
And I've got some notes for some other detectives here. I'm trying to find my rough outline for the whole thing, but it's how would you go about that? And from a non-biased perspective,
right.
Prejudice, you're not biased. You don't care what the outcome is.
Right.
Nicole's mom's a detective. She told me that her mom basically is, she doesn't believe anything. She doubts everything, doesn't believe anybody. That's her default setting.
Right.
And from there, that's where she goes, and then her circle of trust is small, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'd just like to glean from you your mindset, how you would address this case, how you would try to find it for yourself. But you're coming from perspective. I don't know. Are you an atheist?
No. I was not raised with any religion, but I do believe in God.
Uh-huh. Okay. So is there any kind of bias or prejudice, like when you go in as a detective? When you go into a case, do you look like...
No. The most important part, and you'll learn it from mistakes, and it's the only way we learn, and you learn it from other people's mistakes, is anytime you start an investigation with any preconceived notion, you're going to make mistakes. No matter how circumstantial the evidence is when you get there, you still have to be neutral. A good detective isn't there to prove somebody's guilty. A good detective is to find the facts to see if a crime was committed. Unfortunately, with TV and the way people see it, and even detectives and stats, and it kind of leans more to finding a person guilty, which really isn't what we do as detectives. When you start out as a road patrolman, you have some basic guidelines. You're going to stop somebody, you have reasonable suspicion. You're going to arrest somebody, you're going to have what's known as probable cause. As a detective, before you make an arrest, you're supposed to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Detectives aren't supposed to make probable cause arrests. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt means that you're gathering so much evidence that you believe you're going to get a conviction. If you don't have that, you shouldn't make the arrest. It's up to the officer. Detectives should not be making probable cause arrests. So going back to the neutral aspect of it, any investigation I start, I have to be completely in robot mode, completely neutral. So we go back from a case from 2,000 years ago. the first question I would have is the government and the governing laws. Because are we talking about a homicide, justified homicide, an execution, a murder? From what little knowledge I have about Jesus and his life, and I have very limited, I believe at the time, was it the Roman government that ruled his area?
Yep.
If the Roman government found Jesus Christ guilty, if they had a trial, and he was executed legally, is it a murder?
What if it was illegal? What if it violated all? There's actually 6 trials he went through. He had no defendants. He had no evidence presented against him. He was not guilty by any Roman laws or Jewish laws. 3 Jewish trials, 3 Roman trials, and yet he was still executed. Pilate did it. Pontius Pilate. Biblically speaking, Pontius Pilate executes Jesus to curb violence and rioting and stuff, to appease the Jewish mobs.
Right. From my understanding was that the Romans were occupiers. They took over that land. That the Jews had their own faith. It's always dangerous to take away a people's faith, because then you always have to worry about rioting. And so they appeased the Jewish priests and said, hey, look, you can keep your temples, just keep your people in check. They got this one guy, Jesus, who comes up with some new ideas. He's not happy with the people not having food, the priests are living a good life. He sees a different way. He starts getting a flock, people following him, makes the politicians nervous. Why are they following this guy? Eventually, like you said, he gets arrested, and it's not a proper trial. At that point in time, yes, I don't think there was any appeal systems. We could argue that he was murdered. So
easily, definitely. I mean, that's in fact that's the name of our book. It's called an investigation into the homicide of Jesus Christ. That's the name of our booklet, actually.
Right. Now, the only thing I don't have a background is there any artifacts? I'm not talking about witness testimony, Gospels, the Bible. Were there any artifacts that 100% we know he lived, that he was a man and he wasn't 3 men, 3 or 4 men that did amazing things that people just kind of wrapped into one man? Was he one person?
Right.
Can we prove his existence?
Right. Now, what kind of artifacts would you talk about? Obviously not. Let's say without the Bible. Let's say, because people say, well, we can't trust the Bible. That's slanted by people.
Well, but let's not even go there. Just witness testimony is always tough, in any aspect, whether it's the Bible or just somebody testifying about a crime that occurred the week before. So now we're going back 2,000 years. Obviously, we're going to have. So we're looking for any objects that he owned that can be attributed to him. In the Last Supper, was there any objects that specifically were his that we can recover and possibly even get DNA off of? Is there any way we can get the Shroud of Turin? Obviously, is the last piece of evidence that physically we believe. I don't know your beliefs about it. That physically we have today that we could possibly.
That's claimed, yeah.
That we can possibly, bring back to an actual living human being. Once we could prove that, the whole question with Jesus Christ is going to be, from my understanding, once again very limited, was that the body was brought to a cave, and that a few days later the body was missing. He was spotted in certain areas after the fact. He was spotted ascending to heaven, but
for 40 days. The gospel accounts at least say that he walked and talked and ate with people for 40 days after.
Right. So it's one thing if the body disappeared, we can say that just somebody wanted to see him.
Disappeared.
Right. We want to see him buried. What makes the murder case a little weaker is that people have seen him after the fact.
Right.
Now, we have to talk to those people. We have to interview those witnesses. How do you know that was Jesus that you spoke to? How do you know it wasn't somebody trying to gleam off his fame at that point? Or, that felt so strongly about his message that they felt they had to take his personality at that point in time. So those people would be very important to get witness testimony off of those people, or any documentation we can find of those people who claim that. So because without a medical examiner's report of his body. The other thing I'd like to know about, just going back to Jesus was, do we have any physical descriptions of him? Do we have any scars or marks on his body that can be attributed just to him? Any deformities that that we can attribute back to him? That's how we, obviously, we're not going to talk about dental records, but that's something that it's been mentioned by a few witnesses that he had a broken left finger or something was wrong with his knee, and at least that'll help give me a little bit more of a background on who. I would want to know physical attributes, because if I can get enough people to corroborate that they've seen this person and he did walk with a limp because he was he fell when he was a child, he had some sort of plague and it afflicted him later on in life, that visible scarring on his face, that would really convince me that yes, we are talking about a man, and this this is a person. As far as him, how was he killed? Obviously, whose hand was it dealt? Before I understand that he was beaten, severely before he was even crucified. We all know with head trauma today, and you hear about people skiing, and then two days later they just die of hemorrhages in the brain. Was it one of those people that initially beat him that caused the death? I did ask one medical examiner, a friend of mine. I made a call and I asked about crucifixions, and they did advise me that you suffocate, that your internal organs will crush your lungs, and that you'll suffocate. That, but you think of dehydration. You think about he had wounds that he was bleeding from. You think about all other aspects that could have caused the final death. Without a medical examiner to tell me how did he die. Obviously, I know you spoke to other detectives about things, all the things we look on the body. Was he strangled? You look for petechia in the eye. Does he have defensive?
What's petechia?
Petechia, if you get strangled, you burst blood vessels in your eyes. So by just examining, or hanging, if somebody hangs you, or whatever strangulation. You want to look at the body for lividity, because I think in that case there's probably going to be more than enough witnesses that saw him actually being crucified, that actually saw him physically alive on his way to his crucifixion. I don't think we're going to have, I think there's no argument that if he was alive and if he was the man, he was alive before he was crucified. The biggest question is, back in those times, who pronounced a person dead? How do we know he died on that cross, that he wasn't unconscious? I've had cases where, as a rookie police officer, I've gone to old age homes where we were 99% sure these people had passed because their touch was cold, their breathing was so shallow, their pulse was so low, it was barely. There are possibilities where someone is still alive based on the temperature. I don't know what the temperature was. I would love to know what the temperature was that day that he was crucified. I mean, they do talk about cold weather can preserve the body. So my whole case that I am really the most interested in is, do I know he died on that cross? The condition of the body when it was brought to the cave. Did someone check the cave to see if there was any way to get out the back? Was there any hidden ways or hidden, my biggest problem is the body missing, and then people claiming that they saw him later. And I really want to interview those people for, to go back to those physical descriptions that we talked about earlier. To why do you believe it was Jesus that you met in a town? Why
I gotta tell you, there that before is there. And it's not that it's funny. It's just I can't believe I've never heard or thought of it. Was there another exit out of the cave?
Well,
it's a legitimate skeptical
but you're gonna
question.
have to give me. I don't. Who brought in the Bible? Who brought Jesus from the after he died from the cross to the cave? Who in the Bible did that?
I would imagine it was the Romans. Biblically I don't remember.
I thought I saw something that it was actually a friend that it was.
Well, Joseph Arimathea took it. He asked for his body. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did ask for his body. I'm thinking. I thought Joseph asked for it after the crucifixion. No, Joseph Arimathea is a Jewish religious leader. Didn't want to be seen by his fellow Jewish religious leaders during the day, but he went to Pilate and asked for the body.
Right.
He goes, I want to put him in my family's tomb. Of course, it was before. Yeah. So
Okay.
yes, yeah.
So do we think it was that guy, the
Joseph Arimathea.
right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's a good chance that he's the one who brought Jesus.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
Right. Do we know how far it was, the distance from the...
Golgotha to the cross, it was,
We talking
I walked
miles?
I walked it, no.
Wow.
I walked it. Maybe a half a mile.
Right.
I think I'm just trying to recollect. I was in Jerusalem in 1997. I think it was
So-
about a half a mile.
We'd have to figure out how he got the body. Did he carry it himself, which would be half a mile? Did he have a cart?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously he would, I guess he would treat the body with unbelievable reverence.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, this is the conspiracy theorist thing that Jesus wasn't dead and he knew he wasn't dead yet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I did hear that a Roman soldier stabbed him
Mm-hmm.
and water came out, and that's how they said,
Blood and water, yeah.
that's how they said he was dead.
Right.
But once again, we got to go back to that earlier beating. Speak to some medical doctors if there's enough damage to his internal organs to cause hematomas where there would be water, fluid built up from being kicked and beaten. Would that explain why?
Yeah.
And if he was unconscious, obviously he wouldn't respond to being stabbed. And how deep was he stabbed? What part of his body? And all those are questions because I think to start the investigation on whether he was a man or not, I think that's a lot going to go on the faith. And I think as a detective, obviously you can't investigate faith, but you can investigate facts. So I think we're going to have to assume that he was a real man. And now the question was he the Son of God? Did he commit these miracles? Or was he just the most amazingly, bright man that saw, things and was just, was just, maybe he felt his message was so strong and that people needed him so bad that he allowed people to believe that he ascended to heaven, that he was alive, but he told, maybe he passed on messages to his followers of what his beliefs were. He knew that if he showed himself in public, he would just be rearrested and killed, and he felt his message was so strong he had to go into hiding.
People that were following his messages
Right.
would lose out on the benefit of those messages if his non-ascension would take away from
Right. Right. So, if you really believe in what it might be worth,
Yeah. So one of the possibilities is he died on the cross.
Right.
One of the possibilities is he did not die on the cross. That somehow he got off the cross alive and recouped.
Right.
If
Right.
he wasn't decrucified.
Right.
Okay. And then in that case,
Well, the other question is so after he was brought to the cave, did anybody stand by the cave for those? How many days was he in the cave before the
3.
3? So was anybody in the area to see if witnesses reopened the cave? I mean, wow, you gotta. I heard that it was something that was a huge 2,000-pound rock or something that was used to seal the cave, but once again, who made sure that if not, wow,
Yeah.
anything could happen at that point in time.
When?
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, David.
He doesn't look like it, but he runs his property.
Okay.
I'm in here to tell him to clean up his office.
All right.
It's getting pretty good, huh?
I'm the office police.
All right, that's it, man. Somebody's gotta
It's getting better.
get tough.
Ethan, he's here for you.
All right, buddy. Let's
He's
go.
here.
Man.
He's here for you.
Let's go.
He was shooting a gun last night.
Yeah.
He's underage.
What kind of gun?
What kind of gun was it?
Tell him, don't try to lie. Don't look at the police officer in the eye.
Tell him what kind of gun you're shooting.
It is an air gun?
Nerf gun.
Oh, a Nerf gun. You didn't shoot anybody in the eye, did you?
Whose son were you shooting?
That was his.
That's cool, man. He's like,
We had a good time?
I posted on Facebook, Margie, tell Jackson to read the same amount of books again so we can slide
We'll
another
do
one
it
in
again,
before
man.
summer
Hey,
gets out.
we didn't even find all the places. There's a whole bunch of places in that yard that you guys didn't even use for hiding, man. So, all right, we'll do it again, buddy.
Dads versus sons. Next
Yeah, that's good, man. we had my son finished a book, and we did a Nerf gun, pool party, pizza, s'mores, thing at the house, and kids had a blast. There was 8 of them, 8, 9, and my 2 sons and 7 more kids, and they just, run around in the dark, teaming up.
Man. They have a blast.
So awesome, man.
Also, like, if we could find out what the condition of the body when he was coming off the cross, very simple is how stiff was his body.
Mm.
If it's stiff, it's rigor mortis.
I looked up stages of death.
Yeah.
I never heard it. There's like 7 or 9 stages of death. Rigor mortis and all kinds of other
Right.
mortises.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, there's lividity, there's liver mortis. Lividity is where the blood settles because there's no oxygen and it's not being pumped. So I've had homicide cases where the people are laying on their stomach, but yet the lividity is on their back. So I know they were killed on their back and somebody moved them.
Lividity is where the blood sinks down?
It's like a purplish bluish color. Right.
That's when blood settles.
And after that fact, once it settles, no matter where you move them, it'll always stay in that position. So if it's in Jesus' legs and feet, we know he died on that. Listen, he could have died also in that cave of his wounds. He could have died 3 weeks later. People were trying to save him, and then they said, you know what? Let's just say he ascended to heaven. I mean, people could have been trying to save him at that point and said, hey, better, he becomes a martyr and
Yep.
so
and do good for the people.
Right, because. If you think about the amount of injuries in those days, I would say it would be very tough to survive. I mean, I understand he was a young guy and he was probably in pretty good condition, but that type of, the beating he took, plus the crucifixion, I've been told that he probably would never walk. You have nails driven in your feet.
There's Catholic groups in South America and some other parts of the world that they, once a year, they will, somebody chooses or they volunteer, and they get crucified. I mean, they're still tying their wrist around, but they literally put nails through their hands. I don't know if they do it through their feet also.
Right.
And it's probably not the size of the nail that they would have used to
Right.
crucify the
Right.
Romans, because Romans weren't.
No, they
weren't
weren't
about
gentle, right?
They weren't worried about healing afterward. They were. They were.
Yeah,
They're like, yeah, whatever. What's the best thing that can hold a lump of
I
flesh?
did ask my medical examiner about that. He said he did feel that he thought they would have to bind the wrist, that the human hand wouldn't be strong enough to carry the weight.
Yeah. Part of it is. So I think I don't know if they crucified sometimes through the wrist, through the 2 bones, there to hold it up. So I don't know. There's speculation on that. I'm not sure which one it would have been. Interesting. I did on my trip to Jerusalem. They had it was like a Christian center, and it was right in the middle of Jerusalem, and they showed you the different ways. Here's the different ways that they crucify. Here's what a oil press looks like. All the things that you read about in the New Testament.
Right.
They show you what the actual items look like in this kind of park. It's really neat.
Right.
But they had different crosses, and we all see the cross. It's just like that. But there's different kinds of crosses, and some are stakes, and some are it's not like this. It's like this, and so pretty interesting.
Were there rumors that or was this? I didn't see the movie, or was it just people saying because I saw the movie that he actually married a woman named Mary and then went to France, had a child.
That's the Da Vinci Code.
That's a Da Vinci. Is that just a Hollywood thing, or is that people had that idea before?
I don't know. I didn't even see the movie. I tried to watch it, but I tried to watch it 3 times. I fell asleep
it was just
all 3
that bad.
It was so slow. It was just like I couldn't. And I wanted to see it. But yeah, they speculate. Well, they're based on. They look at the Leonardo da Vinci's picture of the Last Supper, and they say, see this one right here. That's actually they're saying because they all had long hair. You could say, well, that was a woman, in the Last Supper instead of John, the Apostle John, or the Apostle Peter, or whatever. I think that's a speculation. They've got all kind of. We see this. There's some, the way that the Leonardo shaped the painting. It indicates this secret society and all this kind of stuff. There's all that clue stuff there. But I think I've never even read. There's Christian literature on how that debunks it all.
Right.
I've never even taken the time to read it because I think it's ridiculous. But I mean, it doesn't carry any weight. I've never heard anybody of substance other than Hollywood speak on it for it to carry weight.
If you go from a logical sense, you talk about a man who. I believe he knew before he entered, was it Jerusalem, where he finally entered, where he was arrested. Yeah. He knew before the fact he'd be arrested. He knew before the fact if he was arrested, he'd probably be killed. I would find it very hard that guy would just get married and just go fly. Well, a man of that deep conviction would you say, you know what, I'm not in? And
Go to France.
Right, I think I've had enough. I think you know what, this was they were actually a lot tougher.
There's a song by Jimmy Buffett. It's called "He Went to Paris" and talks about a guy that does take off and go to Paris. I'm thinking that doesn't fit Jesus.
It doesn't, right. I don't think you can go through all that stuff and say, you know what, guys, I'm done.
Yeah, I'm done.
You guys take over.
Yeah,
it doesn't
fit the overarching story.
Right. When a man of that tremendous faith. Let's talk a little bit about the miracles.
Yeah.
I know. You know, if you can give me a little bit, I believe there was turning wine into water, water into wine, walking on water, and
raising dead people,
healing
the blind,
healing.
You know, there are specific things that the Old Testament talks about. That says that the Old Testament speaks of Messiah, that will be God incarnate, that will be with us, and it talks about very specific things, and it was raising the dead and healing the blind. Things that rabbis couldn't do with all of their faith and power that God has granted them, that Messiah only will be able to do. And no one, I'll put it this way, and no one was able to do it until that time.
Right.
And that's the things he did, yeah. And walking on water wasn't one of those, but it was raising the dead, it was healing the blind, it was healing the deaf, it was the deaf, mute, all the things that are physical, impossibilities for the natural person.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I don't think, in your book, are you going to talk about seeing if you can, as a detective, prove he was the Son of God, or that he was, he had these powers? I mean, that would be all faith-based. I mean, we could pull...
Yeah. No, it's not. I think the bent we're going with is literally, and just like you're going right down the list, and did he exist? I mean, the first one is dealing with doubt. Did Jesus exist? Did he perform so-called miracles? Did he actually die on the cross? Did he rise from the dead? Those are the 4 core chapters. Right. Those are all the things you're talking about. But the bent of this, even I just got the perform miracles chapter last night. I didn't even read it yet. I just started reading it.
The problem with the Jesus story, and I guess Mel Gibson took some of it for, what was the movie he made?
Passion of the Christ?
No, the one before that.
Road Warriors?
Yeah, the guy with the chaps. No, the leather chaps.
I know what you're talking about.
Braveheart.
Oh, Braveheart.
In Braveheart, my question always was, if you had a fanatical group of people that loved you beyond love, how did they allow you just to be killed like that without making some sort of rescue attempt? And I would have trouble believing that these people who loved you, although he had... At the end, he had 8 friends that with him. They all kind of dispersed.
And who? And Jesus or
Jesus,
Braveheart?
at the end when he got arrested.
Yeah. 11, yeah.
11 disciples. But they all kind of dispersed. After. Now, did they disperse because Jesus said, look, I'm definitely dead. I don't want you guys. You guys spread my message. Disappear. No, we're going to save you. Did that argument happen?
So you're saying basically if he had followers
that
saw miracles, that knew he was the real deal, why would they disperse without trying to rescue him?
Right. How could you let the most beautiful, most amazing
person, human being, right,
on earth, you would sacrifice your own self trying to save him?
Right.
I would find trouble with that unless he did have unless he had that talk with him, saying, "Look, I'm going to sacrifice myself. God, my Father, is sacrificing me, so you'll learn. So hopefully, this teaches the whole world."
I'll share with you what the reality of my version of that is. It's pretty easy. Roman army was the best trained killing machine in the world.
Right.
And even in Mel Gibson's movie, these guys are warriors, and come on, but you saw the way they portrayed the English, guys, they were kind of bumbling idiots for the most part. They didn't have a cause to fight for. They were fighting for a jerk king. These guys, with the machete, the sword they had, they could take on 8 to 10 men if you were properly trained with that. That's how they conquered the world. Right. So these guys were fishermen and tax collectors and things like that. It wasn't even like they were warriors against warriors. They were fishermen against the best.
Right, children against men. Right.
Yeah. So there's part of the answer. It's like, okay, well, shouldn't you even try and at least die trying, and would that be noble? Well, they did after that. After the resurrection, all of them died martyrs' deaths. All of them died martyrs' deaths, except for one.
But why? Like when you're saying, what acts were they trying to do?
Well, they were just acknowledging publicly that you were a follower of Jesus.
Right, which was not popular.
They went beyond that, and it's funny because you see Peter, obviously know who Peter is, I'm sure. Peter, James, and John, it's kind of his close core. Peter who denies him 3 times in the Gospels, and you
Right.
see in the Passion of the Christ, he, in the book of Acts chapter 2, stands up and said, "Men and women of Jerusalem," he starts, telling them all about Jesus, standing up in the middle of Jerusalem, and 5,000 people, what we would call an altar call, come to the Lord. They become Christians on the
Right.
spot. They publicly declare and put themselves in jeopardy with A, the Jewish leaders, B, the Romans. Are these guys causing trouble again?
Right.
Is there going to be, it's not it's not like, oh, there's a whole bunch of benefits. You get money and free, and, front row
No.
parking spaces. It's like, all you're guaranteed is persecution.
Right.
And 5,000 people come to Christ
And
that day.
and your families. And I'm sure
Right.
if you're acting up, your
Right.
whole family's going to be wiped
Right.
out.
But all the people in the Jerusalem now witness these things, and then Peter stands up and does this, and he's eventually crucified, and he won't even be crucified standing up. He requests to be crucified upside down because he wasn't worthy to be crucified the same as Jesus. And so all 11 of the or 10 of the 11 were martyred like
Right,
that.
and they weren't hunted down. They came forward.
They came forward. Yeah, they came forward.
It wasn't like they weren't hiding. They were
They were
hunted
not
down.
hiding. No.
Right.
They
They
were
came
very
forward
bold.
and they said, right.
They were very bold about it. They weren't doing they weren't underground.
Unless they felt that, look, I'm going to also sacrifice myself for this cause. And my word will even be stronger if you kill me.
But here's the thing. Yeah, except
It'll even be stronger.
it will. Except here's the only thing though. Liars make bad martyrs, and here's what I mean by that. If you're lying, if you were, let's say Jesus got off the cross alive, or they somehow got the body off the cross, or
Right.
and they revived him, whatever, and they know he didn't rise from the dead. They know They know he never died. They know he didn't rise. Surely know he didn't rise from the dead. And then they went out and became martyrs. I have a hard. That's for me. I have a real hard time.
That's good.
Conceiving of that
Right.
at all.
See, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
That's
So that to me is the biblical account of that. So is like that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't.
Right.
It's hard for anybody because there's people who are martyrs for things that aren't true, but they really believe they're true.
Right.
If the apostles took the body, they would know it's not true.
right. But what if he did die at a later time, not on the cross, but he did die from
But after that, the whole story is not perpetuated. After he didn't rise, if he didn't rise from the dead, if he didn't do the things he said, that's
he would have died out.
Yeah, that's the reason. I mean, you could look at it from because look, I was an atheist. I grew up Catholic. I was an atheist from probably middle school, really probably high school. I'll say middle school to high school up until I was 33. And for me, looking at that whole, all the things that, all the ways that you can look at the story of Jesus. Was he a real person? Did he? I thought a lot of this through, and did my homework on both sides of it, and so I came to the conclusion that, what, you look at the world religions, you look at Islam and Muhammad and clearly from their own, from the Quran,